Hi, I'm Don from DonDronesOn. Ask anyone for their top gripes about home ownership, and I'm sure mowing the lawn is right up there on their list. But it doesn't need to be. In fact, I'm mowing my lawn right now with the Mammotion Luba Mini robotic lawnmower. The folks from Mammotion were kind enough to send me a Luba Mini AWD 1500H robot lawnmower in exchange for this review. But you know I'll give you the straight goods on what I think about it. The goods and the bads. Mammotion has a wide range of robotic lawnmower models for large or small properties and smooth or, well, rough terrain. They recommended the Luba Mini 1500 because my property is fairly large, but is also hilly, irregular, and pretty rough in spots. It ain't no golf green, and I sure didn't think it would handle my tobogganing hill. The Luba Mini is a GPS-controlled autonomous lawnmower. You just drive it around the perimeter of the area you want mowed, and it takes care of the rest. There are no wires to set up. It just does it all based on satellite positioning, a vision system, and just in case, a front bumper sensor. And once you have your lawns defined, you can schedule it to run as often as you want. I do mine every day, and it's so quiet, you won't even hear it going. It can handle hills up to 38 degrees, recharge itself when the battery gets low, and even detect when it's raining, and then head home to wait out the storm. And while all of this sounds amazing, and it is, things were not all rosy for me over the first month that I've been testing it out. Let me walk you through some of the details, point out the best features, and provide you some tips to help you avoid trouble. Everything you need to mow your lawn comes in one rather large box, and there's a comically huge quick start guide to help you out. The robot itself comes pre-assembled except for the vision module that connects on top. There's a few screws to deal with and a cable to connect. It's all very easy, and they even provide the screwdriver. The charging station is also easy to put together and is just a simple platform with charging probes on the back. You can decide on a permanent location now, or just plug it in so you can get your robot charging immediately. That said, positioning the charging station is important to get right. It can't be indoors because the robot needs a clear view of the sky when it's on it. You need to be able to access AC power. Thankfully, the cord is a generous length, and the station needs to be close to, well, dead level. I originally had mine on a very slight slope, and periodically the robot would not stay in contact with the charging probes. Use a level and get it nice and flat, then lock it into position with the lawn screws that are provided in the kit. The good news is that if you do decide to move your charging station later, you don't need to redo your maps. Just select Relocate Charging Station in the app, and off you go. You know, you won't want to do this every day, but it's good to know you can move it if you have to. But the next step is crucial to get right: positioning the RTK antenna. This device is what provides your robot precise positioning information. Because the RTK unit is fixed in place, it can generate what they call correction factors for the GPS positioning data, so your robot can have centimeter level accuracy. The RTK antenna must have a very clear view of the sky and must stay fixed in place. If you move it, all your lawn maps will need to be redone. Now, I started by simply stabbing it into the ground using the lawn stake provided, but only 2 meters away from my house, rather than the minimum 3 meters stated in the setup guide. The app suggested that I had, well, pretty good positioning information, but as it happens, the robot failed horribly. You really do need to mount this up high on your home or some other location with a very clear view of the sky. Frankly, the Mammotion folks need to come up with a more precise method in the app for helping you position it well. For me, this was the most frustrating and time-consuming part of the setup. I just wanted to get up and running fast. But it didn't work. So I recommend you take the time to mount the RTK antenna properly, and you'll thank me later. Keep in mind that you also need to plug the RTK into an AC power source and it needs to be able to access your home Wi-Fi. The Mammotion technical support team was very good in helping me out. Now, once everything is physically installed, use the QR code in the Quick Start Guide to download the Mammotion app to your phone, and then you pair both the robot and RTK unit into your system. It's easy if you just follow the prompts in the app. In all likelihood, both the robot and the RTK unit will need firmware updates, which will take a little while to download and install, but it's not a big deal. Let's have a closer look at the robot. The Luba Mini is styled like a race car, and I named mine Mario immediately. It's battery driven, there's a replaceable battery in the back, all-wheel drive, and can actually turn around right in place. The front wheels have these rollers on them to help with that. The wide, aggressively treaded rear tires make climbing hills effortless, up to 38 degrees, or what's called an 80% slope. And that is steep. My hills, which are steep, are only 22 degrees. The front wheels are independently suspended, which really helps keep the robot stable on rough terrain. And there's a bumper sensor on the front in case it hits something. Now, this turret thing up front here contains the cameras for the robot's 3D vision system. That system is what is used to detect obstacles or hazards, and is also used to help map out your lawn when it's in automatic mapping mode. There's also a headlight on the front here for low light situations, and safety lights back here. Funny they didn't go on there, but that's where they are for visibility. Now, on the top here, there's a giant emergency stop button and buttons for power and starting to head home, and this one that looks like grass is called the Mowing button. But in 99% of the cases, you'll never be touching any of these buttons. You'll be issuing commands from the Mammotion app, so you don't have to worry about these. The one exception is if that emergency stop button is pushed, like I just did. To unlock the robot, you have to physically push the Mowing button and the start button. This is one of the many great safety features built into the Luba. There's also a little security key right here that you can remove to prevent kids from fooling around with the robot. Although, if you did that, you would need to reinsert that key to start the robot remotely or via scheduling, so that'd be kind of a pain. Between the buttons and the vision turret is a rain sensor. If the robot detects rain, it stops mowing and goes home to wait it out. Now, you can disable this feature in the app if you want to, if you want the thing to mow even if it is raining. On the back of the robot are two large contact points for the charging station. Flipping the robot over, we see the business side of the mower. A spinning disc with 6 razor-like blades, like cutters, around the edge. The entire cutting disc can be raised and lowered. It goes up and down. In the 1500H model that I have, the blade can be anywhere from 55 millimeters, or about 2 inches, to 100 millimeters, or about 4 inches high. So you can vary the length of your lawn cut. Now, this is ideal for what I would call a roly-poly lawn like mine, but there is a model with a lower range of cutting heights if your lawn is more flat. Now, because these blades are on swivels, see they move a bit, I think they are less likely to be damaged if they hit a rock, and the kit does come with a replacement set of blades. In order to teach your robot where you want it to mow and where you don't want it to mow especially, you define a map. And when you first start, of course, you don't have a map. There's a little button on the bottom that says create a map. Later on, if you want to add to that map or modify it, you tap on your robot and it'll bring up the map, and you'll have some options at the bottom of the screen to create new areas and things like that. So on a map, there are 3 types of things. Number 1 is the most important, the task area. This is essentially an area of lawn that you want the robot to be mowing. So you can define as many task areas as you wish. So number 2 is a keep out area. Now, Again, you don't have to create a keep out every area for everything. So I've got a lot of trees. It sees the trees and it goes around them. No big deal. I don't have to tell it about trees. But what I do want to tell it about is this area here where these patio stones are, because it will actually drive up on there if I don't tell it not to. And I'm a little bit concerned that it could damage its blades if I do that. That area defines is where my septic tank clean out ports are. So I don't want it to mow up there anyway. So no big deal. So I can define a keep out zone for areas like that. If you have maybe, I don't know, a pond or something like that, or maybe an area of sand or gravel that you don't want it to mow in, define a keep out zone and it'll be fine. The third area that you define is what's called a channel. And a channel is essentially how to instruct your robot to go from its charging station to a task area, or from one task area to another. And you don't have to define each task area to the charging station. It will follow these links around. So that's pretty cool. So how do you define these areas? Well, you do it on the app by selecting the type of area you want to define and then driving the robot around the perimeter of a task area or a keep out zone, or simply driving the robot along the path of a channel. It's very simple. So I'm going to define my first task area, which will be this lawn here. And I do that by basically driving the machine around the perimeter of the area. So you start by driving it forward just to get it off the charging station. And that's going to be the beginning of my task area right there. And so on the screen, and this is important because I've screwed this up, I've happily started mapping it all the way around and I forgot to hit the start mapping a task area button. So there we go, I hit that. Gives you all. So it just said start mapping a task area. So you do that by driving it around. You drive with these two joysticks, a forward-backwards one on the left and a right-left one, or a turn one to the right or to the left on the right-hand side of the screen. I find these a little tricky to use, but you know, depending on how good you are at video games, I guess, you'll be better or worse. So here we go. And you don't have to be too precise. I'm not quite driving down the edge of that thing. Along the edge of that garden. But remember that the cutting blades on the robot are set in almost 6 inches from the edge in the case of the Luba. And as such, you're going to be going around with a trimmer anyway. So you don't have to be too precise about where you're going to, where the boundary is, as long as you're reasonably close. I would recommend you stay fairly close to your robot so you can guide it as well as you can. And as you're going along, it actually shows you the map of where you've defined it. And it will basically allow you to continue doing that until your robot reconnects with the beginning of your defined area. Now, I've got a boat trailer sitting here temporarily, so I'm just going to drive right under it and then come around the other side. Okay, so when it reaches the starting point, so you've connected the perimeter, it comes up and says that the task area mapping is completed, and you have two choices. You can either discard it if you've completely messed it up, or you can save it. So saving it is the best idea. Job area mapping completed, and it will define it as area 1 by default, but then you can go back and rename that to, you know, whatever you call this particular piece of the lawn. So there's my first area completed, and I'm going to now go and create a new one. And you can see on the bottom of the app area there's create or edit or manually drive. So I'm going to hit create, and I'm going to create another area. And at this point, I basically drive to that second area and define it just like I did area 1, but then I need to connect it with a channel. Once you have the areas set up, Actually, mowing the lawn is incredibly simple. Just press Start on the app to initiate mowing all of your task areas. You'll be asked to select the mowing height, and off it'll go. If you want to choose one or more task areas, schedule a task, or adjust some of the more advanced settings like the mowing direction or the speed, you can hit New Task and go from there. In either case, your robot will move to the starting location within the first task area and start mowing. By default, it will mow back and forth in what they call a zigzag pattern first, then go around the perimeter and any keep-out zones twice. If you don't like the direction of the zigzag pattern, you can choose your own direction, or even have it choose a direction randomly each time it starts the lawn. You can choose the classic checkerboard pattern for your mowing if you wish. And there's lots of other settings you can fiddle with to fine-tune the mowing height and patterns. You can also have the robot carve out shapes like a heart or words into your lawn if you want it, well, if you want to get real fancy. I didn't try that out, but it looks like fun. I found the robot managed the mowing perfectly for my crazy hilly property. It handled the steep hills and uneven sections easily. It seemed to lose its grip a little bit on what I call my tobogganing hill, but then again, so do I. I measured that hill to be around 23 degrees of slope, well shy of the 38-degree limit for the robot. This is a very steep hill with nothing at the bottom to prevent the robot from rolling into the lake, so I was a bit nervous to try it, but it took the challenge successfully. Because I had Mario mowing almost every day, it was snipping off only tiny bits at a time, so there was no clumping or anything like that, even when the grass was wet. But one definite problem was on my large lakeside lawn. The turf is quite weak on the hill, and the robot's wheels churned up the soil on the turns, leaving, well, frankly, quite a mess. I changed the turning mode from rotate in place to multi-point, and that helped a bit. I've also started changing the mowing direction to give the lawn a bit of a chance to recover, but I suspect that this is always going to be an issue on this part of the lawn. The robot drives over twigs and small branches easily, sometimes cutting them up and sometimes, well, just running over them. I did notice one time it had a small branch jammed underneath it, but it didn't seem to be causing a problem. Larger branches are detected as obstacles, and the robot just drives around them. Speaking of obstacles, you really should go around before mowing and remove debris from the lawn. And of course, toys or things like garden hoses. I did test how it would handle a few items. A shoe was happily detected and the robot went around. But surprisingly, a garden glove was completely ignored. I guess it was nice and flat, and the robot mowed right over it with no damage. Same with an old wire I laid out. It nicked the wire a tiny bit, and I suspect the wire would have been really fouled up underneath it if it did get caught, but it didn't. In case I didn't mention it, the robot actually diverts around people and pets, making it remarkably safe while in operation. While the robot is mowing, you can monitor its progress on the map view. It shows the percentage complete and the estimated time remaining, which is quite handy. And you can also drop in on the camera view with the FPV button. Now that is incredibly fun to do, and I suppose you could also use it to monitor your property if you were away. And of course, you can use all of these features from anywhere in the world because it's all done over the internet. So you might wonder about theft management. What happens if somebody swipes your robot while it's working? Well, there's two system features that are supposed to help in this regard. Number one is it can offer a push notification if your device is 50 meters outside of a task area. When I tested that, well, at the point that it would have given me the notification, it was no longer connected to the internet, and so I got nothing other than the fact that the robot had been picked up. The second feature is a Find My Device feature. But again, unless your robot is actually connected to the internet, so if somebody steals it and tries to connect it to their internet, well, unless it's got that internet connection, you can't find it. It still thinks it's at home. So neither of these theft management features are particularly effective, in my opinion. I hate to leave this to the end, but do you know one of the best things about the Luba? It's so insanely quiet. Even when I held the microphone right up to it, you can hardly hear it. Imagine having your lawn mowed and not having to listen to it. Oh, and speaking of listening to it, by default, the robot speaks to you when it is picked up or if it returns to the charging station or a myriad of other cases. It's quite loud, and it actually drove me a bit crazy when I was testing things, so I turned off the voice function. So let's review the key issues and pluses. On the issue side, setting up that RTK antenna was a pain in the butt. I have a fairly heavily treed property, so finding a convenient spot for the antenna that gave it clear sky access and access to power was tricky. I strongly recommend you take the time to get this right the first time and save yourself a lot of frustration. Second, more of a tip than an issue really, but you do need to make sure the charging station is almost perfectly level. And it also needs to have a clear view of the sky for positioning. On the operational side, the wheels, well, they can tear up your grass, particularly when it turns around on hills. Fortunately, there are ways to mitigate this, but it's something that you may need to deal with if your property has steeper slopes. Finally, it can't mow close to borders or trees, so you do need to go out periodically and weed whack. Some of the other Mammotion robot mowers have 2 cutting discs, so they cut a little bit closer to the edge, something to consider when choosing your model. Now for the positives, and there are so many. I guess number 1 has to be that it mows the lawn. It works, and it works amazingly well. Second, it is unbelievably quiet. If everyone had a mower like this, the world would be a better place. Third, it's very easy to program your lawn areas and to modify them if there are changes you want to make. All you do is drive it around and off it goes. The app is easy to navigate and provides you with a huge amount of flexibility in how and when your lawn is mowed. And that's great. And while this is kind of subjective, I like the looks of Mario. The designers have done a great job making the robot look very cool and stylish. You can't knock that. So there you have it, the Mammotion Luba Mini AWD 1500H robot lawnmower. It knocks lawn mowing right off your list of stuff you hate to do. There's a link in the description below the video if you want to check out the price and other models in the Mammotion line. Thanks for watching.